All right, Josh Johnson here. We are talking all things weather, specifically the threat of snow across Alabama tomorrow. Hard to believe. We are almost to the finish line on this thing. I have been staying up too late every single night for the last week trying to figure out what in the world this thing is going to do. We have a lot of answers. We still have some questions, right? That's just the nature of these setups and the nature of these sorts of events across the state. So we will begin with a look to the west, right? That's always a good thing to do, right? There becomes a time when models become less important than what is actually happening in the atmosphere. Snow flying across much of Texas. Ice falling across parts of Texas as well. Snow beginning to overspread parts of southwest Louisiana as well. This will continue to fill in as we go on through the next several hours here, and we'll kind of track every bit of that as that happens. So, getting into the data here, let's talk about it. So, two parts of this forecast. One of them is really straightforward, and one of them is very, very difficult. Right? South Alabama, it is going to snow. And in parts of South Alabama, it's going to snow a lot. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of snow possible in parts of South Alabama. Mainly far South Alabama. The tricky part of this forecast is what happens around Montgomery, Auburn, Tuskegee, Selma, Prattville, Pike Road, Millbrook, and points north from there. There's going to be a very sharp cutoff zone, right? Where you go from north to south, no snow, no snow, no snow, big snow. Right? And that cutoff is going to be almost a line in the sand. And if you're 10 miles north of it, you get no snow at all. If you're 10 miles south of it, you get an inch and a half of snow, and the roadways are iced up, and it's big trouble. So that's the challenge in this, is figuring out exactly where that line sets up. The good news is we're getting closer. The Zero-Z computer model suite incorporated data from a Hurricane Hunter aircraft that was in the storm. They flew a mission tonight. They went out there and took observations from around this developing winter storm. That's one of the problems. People ask, why is it so hard to predict snow? Well, the area of low pressure that brings us rain in March tracks across land. In the United States, if a storm system tracks across land, we can look at it with ground-based radars. We can launch weather balloons near it to sample the upper air environment around it. We can get airplane data that flies around that. We have a vast network of surface observations where we can see the precise weather around that storm system. We have almost none of that in the Gulf of Mexico, right? So the models are only as good as the data you put into them. And in the Gulf, that's a challenge because it's a big body of water. I call it the Gulf of Mexico. I think technically it may be the Gulf of America by now. I'm going to wait for a day or two and get some clarification on that and do a little research on that. But either way, the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, whatever we're calling it, not a lot of weather observation equipment out there. So them flying that mission, that's going to help us with the data tonight, the model data tonight. The other thing that's happening is the winter storm is actually taking shape now. We will begin to see it on radar and be able to track it over land in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So this will start to come into a lot clearer focus as we do that. Okay, so I will begin with a couple of different sets of model data. This is the graph. I think it's wrong about a few things. It's too slow with the snow starting. I think it will happen sooner than that. And the latest data we're seeing, even in the graph, we're seeing more of a push back to the north. Notice at 3 o'clock here, there's snow flying well up into Elmore and Tallapoosa and Chambers, right? That's part of that northward push I've been telling you about for days. I have, in deep detail, studied every winter storm that has ever hit the state of Alabama. And that has been my experience in the recent ones, the ones that have happened in the modern weather forecasting era. The computer modeling typically plays this game of catch-up as we approach on these surface-based lows in the Gulf with overrunning moisture, meaning the models can't resolve that very well. And then right at the end, they say, whoa, wait, there's actually a lot of warm air advection, a lot of moisture, a lot of isentropic lift here. And they start to play catch-up. They start painting precipitation north, right? The graph has started this trend now. It didn't before, but now look at that. That's actually pretty heavy snow falling well up into Watauga and Elmore and Tallapoosa and Lee and Macon and Chambers. obviously to go along with what's happening back down to the south there. So this is our forecast map. Now, I'm going over the 0Z data now. That's the evening computer model suite. I'm going to tweak this a little. I'm going to take the blue and drag it a little further north up here into Chambers and Tallapoosa and Elmore, and maybe even that southeastern corner of Autauga County. So I suspect we end up with an inch or more in some of those counties I just mentioned there. So that's the other thing we're seeing in the data here. 3 days ago, this line was showing up as due east and west. It was running just like that. We're starting to see more of it's going to tilt down, meaning there's going to be parts of West Alabama that the snow totals go down in, right? Marengo, Dallas, northern Wilcox, Perry. But then in East Alabama, I think the odds go up a bit, right? Into parts of maybe Elmore, Tallapoosa, especially southern Tallapoosa, Chambers. And we've already nudged that up a little today and really yesterday because we expected that to happen. That's one cool thing about having a meteorologist who's totally obsessed with Alabama snowstorms is you can sometimes beat the models and get out ahead of them a little bit. So this will change a little. The expectation level on the mapping here will change. Let me show you this. So this is the brand new North American mesoscale. And for those watching on Facebook and YouTube, we're going to take this full screen. On the weather app, I'm not able to do that. If you're watching this on the First Alert weather app or news app, I'll be kind of annotating it for you picture in picture here. But so a couple of things I think the NAM is right about. Look at this. The NAM actually has snow breaking out. Here's Montgomery, south of Montgomery and west of Montgomery as early as, this is valid at 7 a.m. The NAM typically does a very good job recognizing that in these sorts of warm air advection regimes, you end up with snow earlier than expected. So I think this is the right idea. I think by 7, 8, 9 a.m., we start to see snow break out across a big chunk of the state. You will also notice this is snow well up into central Alabama here now. So there has been a marked northward shift in at least the NAM data. Look, other models don't have that, right? But there has been a northward shift throughout the day, right? And you end up with some pretty decent snow that falls across most of the state. It's really not out until 10 o'clock. This is valid at 10. Everything's gone. So let me show you the updated snowfall map off the NAM here. And I want to show you some that show less snow than this, just so you have to see what I have to see, right? I have to see all this data that points in 5,000 different directions and then give you a straight, easy to understand answer about what the heck's going to happen. So this is the new snowfall total off the NAM. Couple of things here. You actually end up with some pretty healthy snowfall totals up here in the parts of Elmore, Tallapoosa, Chambers, and Lee especially. You get this swath of moderate to heavy snow that goes from Opelika to Tuskegee back down. Remember, this is not the forecast. This is a model. It's a raw piece of data. If looking at this confuses you, think of this. This is one ingredient in the forecast. Go back to the map that I showed you earlier. Again, if this confuses you, don't worry about that, right? Don't pay this any attention. Just stick with what I told you about the map before it. So in this instance, it actually prints out over an inch of snow at Montgomery, and then South Montgomery, South Lowndes, you end up around 2 to 4 inches of snow. Dothan over half a foot. That would be the largest snow on record in Dothan, by the way, even eclipsing the big 73 storm. The heaviest snow in 73 was actually a little north of Dothan. So some healthy totals here, right? So that's the NAM, but there are other models, right? There are other high-resolution models that show something totally different than that. One of those is the high-res rapid refresh model. And yeah, look at that. No snow at all for a lot of you. Let me say again, I don't buy this, but just so you see what I see, this shows no snow anywhere really outside of the Wiregrass in southern Covington County. This would be kind of I guess you call it a worst case scenario for the snow fans in the crowd tonight. But I don't really buy that. That is a bit of an outlier. There are a few others we can look at. This one also is pretty far suppressed, right? This keeps Montgomery dry, and you get a healthy accumulation of snow in South and Southeast Alabama. These are all just high-resolution, short-range models. We'll just kind of cycle through them. This one, I think, it goes back a little more closer to reality. This one gets light accumulations up into Montgomery with an inch or so across 1 to 4 inches across most of South and Southeast Alabama. Okay, so those are the 0Z runs that we have available to us right now. Understand, as the night wears on, we will get more and more of these. Another one is the Icon. This has been, by the way, this model has been way south this whole time. But it too is trending back north. It's still not as north as the NAM, but it has come north a little bit. So that's the Icon computer model. That's a German weather model. The brand new hot off the press GFS is out. Yeah, buddy, look at that. So again, you start to see in the GFS and the NAM, which by the way have been around longer, and me personally, I'm going to put more stock in the GFS and in the NAM at short range. The NAM in the long range gets kind of wonky, but the NAM in the short range, I'm going to put more stock in those, and this shows close to an inch in Montgomery, and it shows close to half a foot from Dothan to Florala, and it shows 1 to 3 inches with higher amounts for much of South and Southeast Alabama. It also shows that steepening, including more snow back over into Auburn, Opelika, Tuskegee, parts of Tallapoosa, and Chambers. So this, again, the two most reliable models of the ones I've shown you here are the ones that are showing that little bit of a northward push and also a tilting of the precipitation field from, instead of it being east-west, it's really more southwest up to northeast. So I understand a lot of this is super technical, but that's really the point of these First Alert Weather Extra live streams, is we're going to get into some stuff that we don't always talk about. So, and you're going to see the same things that I see, which is what I want. That's what I want to happen, right? Like I want you to see the raw data here. There's another QPF. That's a precipitation forecast off of the Icon model as well. So again, if all of this is very, very confusing to you, I would encourage you to just sort of stick with what we've got, right? So the official forecast. You really can't go wrong with that. What is the official forecast? Well, it's right there on the screen. Understand, I'm going to edit this a little bit for the 10 o'clock news, which starts in about 15 minutes. I'm going to bump up Lee County probably to 1 to 3. I'm going to change Chambers County probably to 1 to 2. I'm going to change Tallapoosa County to 1 to 2. I may drop Wilcox down a little. Those western counties, I think this is going to probably underperform in west central Alabama. Marengo, Wilcox, Dallas, particularly northern Dallas, Perry, those are places where I think this probably ends up underperforming. I think this ends up potentially overperforming in some of those eastern counties. So I've already got Russell at 1 to 3. I feel good there. I've already got Macon at 1 to 2. I feel good there. I'm probably just going to add Tallapoosa and Chambers into that 1 to 2 inch realm. Understand, not everyone in those counties will see 1 to 2 inches of snow, but that's meant to sort of just, if you take all the snow reports across the county and average them together, that's what you will get. Good rule of thumb with this storm. The farther north you live in a county, the less snow you'll get. The farther south you live in a county, the more snow you'll get. So especially in those border counties, right, on the northern fringe of this whole thing. So that's the snow potential graphic there. I have the counties. This is the kind of the raw data here, the map behind the map, if you will. And there you have it. There you see it, right? So the changes I'm going to make are over here in this eastern side. We're going to bump that up a little bit for eastern and southeastern Elmore. This could be one where Tallahassee gets a decent accumulation of snow and Hopeville and Slapout get almost nothing. Understand, too, this line, I'm tweaking it now. It's probably going to change more late tonight and tomorrow as we see trends start to develop on radar and as we see new model data that has even better information coming into it. So expect additional changes. And look, if you live up here, northern Autauga, northern Elmore, the trends today have been better for you. And if you get another 15, 20 mile northward shove overnight tonight, you're gonna get some healthy snow out of this. You may anyway, right? Like you're in that 1 inch or less category, but an inch of snow when it's 28 degrees accumulates to everything and all the roads freeze up. So That's sort of where we are right now. And I want to emphasize this, and then I'm going to get into your questions on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching us on the First Alert Weather app, we're also simulcasting this on Facebook and YouTube, so you can ask questions. Now, if you're asking questions about specific cities and counties and towns, I'm not going to answer those. There are too many of them, and look, I've got an entire graphic that is nothing but that. And I'll put it on the screen for you here. I'll make it full screen on Facebook and YouTube. So, Wells, right now, I'm not bumping Montgomery yet, but boy, it is close. You know, look, the honest answer is Montgomery's already in that 1 to 2 inch. So Montgomery, to some degree, was already accounted for in that northward shift. For those of you who have watched these and have kept up with my forecast, you know this northward shift does not surprise me in any way. It surprised me it took this long to develop. I will tell you, and my wife will tell you, I was one very nervous person yesterday and the night before when I went to bed, and I looked at that zero-Z model suite before I went to bed. That I was like, man, I've been talking about a northward shift and everything went south. What happened? But now a little bit of vindication. Okay, Hayden asks, can you briefly explain what is pushing the northward shift? I can, but we're going to get really deep into some meteorology here. There's two main things that are pushing the northward shift, and the best way to explain this is to take you out into the Gulf of Mexico. So we're getting an area of low pressure that's forming right down in here. Really, right now it's over here. It's going to push like this. Warm air right now, the low is back here. Warm air is riding up and over the top of cold air in place. We call that overrunning. It features isentropic lift, right? Which is just warm, moist air rising up and over the top. If you think about this kind of three-dimensionally, you're getting cold air at the surface and then that moisture riding up and over the top of it here. So that's what we're seeing. Models tend to struggle with that. And there's a lot of complicated reasons for that get into physics, but all this warm air advection adds a lot of moisture and a lot of energy to storms. And the models typically handle it pretty poorly. They get the main idea right, but where they can mess up, you usually end up with heavier snow than anticipated in that sweet spot. That's why, look, the models the last few days have been showing an inch in Dothan, and I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. It's higher than that. They messed that up. They also tend to mess up the northward extent of the precipitation. Because this is a battle, right? You're getting the warm, moist air coming in out of the Gulf of Mexico, but at the same time, you have a lot of dry air in place over Alabama. It's a battle between the moisture and the dry. The models tend to overestimate how far south that dry air holds the precipitation. It usually overachieves by some amount. Some storms overachieve to the north by a lot. Some storms overachieve to the north by a little. Some storms don't overachieve at all to the north. But the majority of them tend to do so. So that's the main reason is the warm air surging north out of the Gulf of Mexico, that warm air advection, the precipitation formation processes that release additional latent heat and energy into the environment, adds more moisture, adds more energy. So it sort of starts to feed back on itself a little bit. Second thing that's happening here, let me show you this. This is actually pretty cool. So aloft, way up high in the sky, by Tuesday night, there's going to be what's called a shortwave trough that's digging in just west of Alabama. It's in the jet stream. It's a relatively small trough. We call it short wave because a lot of troughs are very tall. This ones are short, and it's kind of embedded within the larger scheme, the larger trough that's causing the cold air. The latest few runs on this have been taking this shortwave trough and sort of amplifying it and tilting it back more northwest a bit in the last few model runs. We've seen that especially in the GFS computer model. So to look at this, you look at the 500 millibar vorticity chart, and you will see there's this stripe right down the middle of that shortwave with what's called positive vorticity advection. Big, long phrase. All it means is there's a little strip there where the atmosphere is really going to stretch out more moisture. It's going to create additional snow and additional precipitation. And that's what's happening as the surface low moves this way. We get a kind of a brief little flowering, in my opinion, a brief little pop of snow, particularly right in this part of Alabama. So from Montgomery east and southeast, it will fill back into a lot of this area, and that's where I think you would see areas that miss the snow in the morning. It sort of fills in right there at the end. And let me show you this. Actually, I was looking at a model earlier that actually started to catch on to this idea that typically happens, and I've seen it happen a lot. So this is the North American mesoscale model, right? So watch what happens here. Right there, boom. See that? Let me switch this back over so everyone can see it. Okay, so if you look at this, this is at noon. The snow is breaking out across a lot of parts of the area, and then it starts to move away. And then watch right here. It's going away, and then look at that, boom, right there. See that on that back edge right there? That's that 500 millibar positive vorticity advection. That's that core of that shortwave trough pivoting through the area, and that is a strip of accumulating snow that is hitting a lot of the area here in Autauga and Elmore and Tallapoosa and even Montgomery and Lowndes. So that northward shift, that's going to, I think that if you're looking for snow north and northeast of Montgomery, so north of 85, east of 65, that's going to be something you're going to watch for. Do you see that? And look, the timing's everything on this. If the timing's off by 3 hours, it happens over in Georgia. If the timing's a little earlier, some of you in Marengo and Perry could cash in. So that's the thought process with all of this. So there you go. That is, I know, way, 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 way more than most of you ever wanted to know. Would I say I'm still being conservative on the forecast? Yes, I actually am. Look, like, this is the latest NAM model for Dothan has half a foot of snow. The latest GFS model for Dothan has half a foot of snow. I'm not ready to make that call yet. I'm sticking with 1 to 3 inches plus. Now, if we get additional data, and I'm going to wait on the European tonight and a couple more of the short range models, we will probably, after the 10 tonight, go up to maybe a 3 to 5 inch zone down there in the southeastern corner of the state where confidence is highest. But I haven't focused as much on that for 2 reasons. One, Dothan, the great team at WTVY, Zach, my buddy David Paul, they're on top of that. They got that. That's thing one. Thing two, from an impact perspective, Dothan, whether they get 3 inches or 5 inches, it almost doesn't matter. The impacts are going to be the same, and same with the Wiregrass and same with Covington County. So there you go. Please remember Lee County. Janet, we talked a lot about Lee County tonight, and I'm actually bumping my snow totals up for Lee County. If you missed that part, I'll post the whole video. When this is over, it'll post to my Facebook page. Watch it there. But we're going to bump Lee up a bit. I'm going to bump Chambers up a bit. I'm going to consider looking at Tallapoosa and Elmore a little too, to come up a little bit. What about the Canadian, asked Kent. Kent must be a problem creator. The Canadian's been crazy aggressive this entire time, by the way. So I'll show it to you because I'm interested and I haven't looked at it yet. But I want you, when you look at it, I don't want you to think, oh, Josh is saying this is going to happen. I will say the Canadian came back to earth a little today. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable, actually. The latest, this is the regional Canadian. It's higher res. You've got 1 to 3 down south. This is actually, if you look at our forecast map right now, this is almost identical to what we've got. Like, I mean, kind of uncannily so. So I think that's actually a pretty good run off the Canadian. Okay, so do I think it will continue to shift northward through the night? Not a ton, right? I think it's really more of the axis is sort of pivoting, where it comes down a little in West Alabama, it goes up a little in East Alabama. I do think there's still another 20 or 30 miles wiggle in this thing where it could come back north a little more. So there you go. Valencia, I've already bumped Montgomery County. I did that. That's already baked in. We already expected that to happen. I got Montgomery County at 1 to 2 inches. South Montgomery County probably ends up higher than that, but most of the people live in North Montgomery County. So I'm going to keep it at 1 to 2 for that reason. But if you live South Montgomery County, I expect 2 to 3 down there between us girls. By the way, they started calling me what they think is my full name, Joshua Eugene Johnson, on the Facebook Live. Mark Bullock's sitting right over here, by the way. I'm not talking to myself. But That's not actually my middle name.
I was about to say, I don't think
It's
your name
it's,
is P.
it's not. I'm not going to tell you my middle name because there's too many identity thieves out there. But my middle initial is P, just so you know. It's not E. Timing this out, this is going to be the snow breaks out early in the morning, 7, 8 in southwest Alabama, 8 to 10 in the middle of the state, after 10 in East Alabama. The initial wave starts in the southern counties. It may be more into the afternoon or midday into the afternoon before this starts in central Alabama. So we've got time to look at that. Speaking of time, I'm out of it. So should you be looking at radar trends to the west? Yes, you should, but you should be checking those against ground truth. A lot of what you see on radar is evaporating before it hits the ground because this is a very, very dry situation. So, okay, that's the story. I'm out of time. I got to go. We've got WSFA 12 News at 10 starting in a minute and a half. So wherever you're streaming this, if you're streaming it on the First Alert News app or weather app, you can go there now and stream the 10 o'clock news. Or wherever you watch your TV, fire that up on WSFA. So Facebook and YouTube, I'm going to wind that one down, but we will, the newscast will begin streaming right here in a little over 1 minute. We'll do an additional Facebook Live, probably multiple of them as we go through the day tomorrow. I'll post again tonight around midnight with updated mapping and thoughts. So I promise we're not going anywhere. We will certainly keep you posted. Hope you all have